Okay, so it's time for another Freebie Friday. And in this one, we are going to talk a little bit about our IfScreenShort Code and just show you a practical use case for how this can be applied in order to make your workflow a little bit less cumbersome. And right here, what we have on screen is we have a typical two-step order form, click funnel style, where there's no reload. If you don't know how to do that, I'll go ahead and link to the tutorial for that in the description below. But what we're looking at here is we're actually looking at the way something like this is traditionally built, especially when you have graphics like this with arrows that are pointing. In this case, because I'm on my desktop, this arrow is pointing to the right. But if I look at it on a mobile, what I have a completely different graphic that now has the arrow pointing down. Now, obviously, if this were a real page, I'd play around with the padding to make it look better, but you get the point. So the traditional way to do something like this, besides worrying about the two-step factor, is to be inside of Ontraport. And in the actual editor here, we're going to take a look at how this is traditionally set up. So normally what you do is you would have one block for the desktop, right? You can see desktop view here. We do the display settings. We make sure it's desktop only and display immediately. And then you'd have another block that would be for the mobile view, and same type of deal, right? Mobile only, you do all your adjustments. Now you can see as I flip between these two blocks, probably easier to see in this view, you can see, actually no. Look, so you have this desktop setup is set up with a row here that has two columns, and then another row that has another two columns in it. And if we look at this one, you can see that I'm using the upper column here. I could if I really wanted to, I could delete this entire row and just have this text sitting above the video, and then this is actually part of that lower column, right, in the second row. And the reason for that is because it won't look right if it's not set up that way. And you can see that even so, it does have a little bit of adjustments to be made. But that's neither here nor there. The point of this video is that if you are doing it the out-of-the-box normal traditional way, you have to have two separate blocks in order to make this work and to make it look right. Now, that's okay when you have a page that only has maybe 5 to 10 blocks, but once you start getting into more complex pages, or you have a lot of elements or a lot of situations where it's only one or two elements that are out of place when you go to mobile and it's not the entire block that's messed up, it's kind of a pain to have to create multiple blocks to basically show the same content. Now, it does give you greater flexibility because you're able to really hone in and make the spacing exactly how you want it, and it makes it simple, but it's not really time efficient to always have to be duplicating blocks, right? And this is especially true when you have more complex issues with things like forms, where any change you make to one form, you have to always remember to go and make the same change to the second form. So if this were the actual payment part, the second step 2 here, then what you would have to remember to do all the time is to make sure that you're always going in, and when you're trying to test things, you have to make sure that you have it on the dummy gateway, and then you have to do that for both blocks. That way you can test it on mobile and desktop. But then when you want to make it live, whoever's building it for you has to remember to turn both of them from dummy to Stripe or whatever payment gateway you're using. So there are multiple things that just kind of get a little bit of a hassle when you're always having to deal with separate blocks just to play with different devices. So our solution to that was to create the IfScreenShort Code. And what that does is it allows us to have situations where we actually only need to adjust 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 50, but we only need to adjust the actual individual elements based on the screen size or the device type, rather than having to actually reproduce the entire block and then do specific adjustments just for that. So the shortcode itself couldn't be simpler. It works just like our if anchor shortcode, where basically we have an opening tag and we tell the tag, okay, so in this case, if screen is minimum width, so that means it's at least 1441 pixels wide, then do this and this, right? And so what we're telling it to do is we're saying, okay, hide these mobile specific elements here and show desktop specific elements here, right? And we do the same thing, right? So this is for large monitors. If it's a desktop or laptop, which we've defined as between 1025 pixels and 1440 pixels wide, then do the same thing, right? Because these are both desktop elements. And what we're really talking about here, just to remind you, is we're talking about show this arrow to the right and show these tabs like this, right? And if it's on a mobile, then what we want to do is we actually want to hide the desktop specific element, right? Which are the arrow to the right and the two tabs above, and show the mobile specific elements, which are the arrow down and the tabs inside of the actual column. All right. So let's go ahead and adjust this a little bit. All right. And so what we're looking at is we're looking at how that all plays out in real time. So we're going to go ahead and publish this again. And here is the original page. And the original page, I'm going to reload it. You'll see no changes, right? So here we go. We have the desktop version of the page here, tabs like this. We have the arrow going to the right. If I switch this to the mobile view with inspect, then I can see that we have the arrow going down, right? So this is what we were expecting, right? Now, if I open this up and I put a little URL parameter here to only show that secondary block, the combined view, if the URL parameter is in there. So this is the original block, the original desktop block. And you can see that when we go down here, we should now see the combined view, right? So we're showing this. Now, the reason that this isn't all the way up like this one is because I didn't adjust the margin here on the fly. I could adjust the margin of the column itself on the fly, no problem. That's just one more line of code. But you can see that the point is that it is showing the tabs outside of the column and it's showing the arrow to the right. If we switch to the mobile view, you can see the original mobile block here, and you can see the updated mobile block down here. So with a little bit of adjustment, you can see that it's very easy now to specify specific elements, and we can do specific elements, specific columns, specific fields. We can adjust all of those things based on the screen size rather than having to rely on showing and hiding entire blocks like we would normally be restricted to doing if we're using just the out-of-the-box options here, right? Because right now all we have are block-specific instructions that we can give to it. And in the comments below, like I said, I will link to the tutorial on how to do a ClickFunnels style two-step checkout form with no reload, and also link you to a step-by-step instructional video on how to make use of the IfScreenShort Code, which has a couple of handy little templates that you can just kind of copy and paste into your pages to make them work. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please drop a comment below. You can subscribe to the channel and click like. That really helps us grow. And if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to hear them down here in the comments below or on Facebook inside of the Ontraport group or inside of our ClickFix members group.